Her injuries are extensive.
Sharp nails, all her chest, here and here and here.
A moment of childish curiosity has changed JAMEELA's life forever. She picked up a landmine and it exploded in her face, sending shards into her eyes and tearing off her hand. It was always going to be tough for her in Yemen, but the mutilations she'll now have to cope with mean a lifetime of hardship ahead of her.
It's a miracle to start living, because we accepted her to be maybe died in the operations. She lost a lot of blood, and she was brave and she lived.
She tells us she was with two friends when she spotted the landmine. JAMEELA may never recover from this. Human rights investigators believe what happened to her and so many others are war crimes, and those responsible should be brought to justice. They're still living in fear of Houthi rebel snipers picking them off one by one in parts of TAIZ city. This city is probably the worst affected by Yemen's civil war, in a country suffering the world's biggest humanitarian crisis. Access by journalists and international monitors is rare and difficult, with opposing sides on this civil war holding different sections of the city. Pro-government fighters backed by a Saudi-led coalition supported by Britain have driven the rebels out of this part of TAIZ, but it's still far from safe, with both sides accused of human rights violations against civilians. The battle scars are all around, but many families have no choice but to keep on living amongst these ruins.
And does she feel safe enough to live here? A little bit.
We have no option, she says. War has become horrifyingly normal for these Yemenis. She says she's going to try to fix it up. This is where her family and children will live from now on.
The Houthi rebels took over several streets in the city and they dug themselves in by tunnelling through room to room and building to building so that they could cross across a number of different buildings unseen by the advancing government troops who were trying to push them out. And huge sections of the city have just been reduced to rubble.
They can see the rebels from here. Look, they're just on the hill, he says. Sometimes they're streets away. The civilians caught in the middle live in constant fear. Ahmed was taking out the family rubbish when he was shot. The bullet hit me here, he says, and then went straight through my arm. He was incredibly lucky. The sniper was almost certainly aiming for his heart. His grandfather shows us Ahmed in a coma in hospital. We thought we'd lost him, he says, but what could we do? This is our life. But whenever the Houthis retreat from territory, human rights groups claim they leave behind hidden mines and booby traps and keep on targeting civilians.
30 civilians on this street alone have been killed as a result of all the indiscriminate shelling and the continuous sniper fire.
A new centre's just opened in TAIZ for the war wounded, many of them amputees like mother of 7 Hind Yusuf. She stepped on a mine buried near the entrance of her home when she went back after the fighting, and she's not the only one mutilated in her family. The same thing happened to 2 of my relatives as well, she says. One of them lost both their legs, another one lost a leg like me. At the centre, they're making multiple artificial limbs to cope with the existing number of amputees. There are more than 800 already, and there's an expectation there'll be many more.
Many of mines are there still. So we cannot say about exact number about it, but we are thinking it's a lot of mines are there and a lot of people we are expecting to come because of that mines.
Hundreds?
More,
thousands?
More than 1,000.
Every single civilian, like Hind, who's caught up in this war is an innocent. Their lives altered forever, whatever the outcome. And that's what the very few independent groups are working to change.
We don't have heroes in Yemen, we have only criminals and victims. And the huge gap when it comes to Yemen is accountability. So parties to the conflict, they act as they trust impunity, and they act as they will never be held accountable.
It doesn't look like it, but this is the main government jail in TAIZ, holding hundreds of prisoners, including women. It's very close to the front line, which means it's regularly attacked by the Houthis. We managed to get rare permission to go inside. Many complain of relatives just disappearing inside here, with abuses rife and few able to question the authorities.
Suddenly the shrapnel bombed here. You can see the marks.
This used to be the female wing, and we're the first foreign journalists to see this. The walls are pockmarked from the most recent Houthi attack here. The prison authorities say shelling from Houthi rebels killed 4 female prisoners, a prison guard and a child inside. Targeting any civilians is an international war crime.
Assalamu alaikum.
We were taken to see some of the survivors, including one young woman who told us her whole family was in jail without a trial. Her mother was amongst those killed in the shelling. It was an horrific scene, she says. Whether it was my mother or others, they were all cut in pieces. It was carnage. The prison is filled with inmates complaining they've been imprisoned unjustly. The jail has been repeatedly shelled from the nearby Houthi front lines. They tell us no one feels safe here, and many fear they're just waiting to be killed. Right now, few inside believe they're getting justice, and whilst the conflict continues, there seem to be violations upon violations of international law. Alex Crawford, Sky News, in TAIZ, Yemen.